Hello and welcome to Manx Radio. I'm our election producer, Amy Griffiths, and this is our general election candidate interview series. On Thursday, the 24th of September, Manx residents will have the chance to decide who'll be representing them for the next 5 years in the House of Keys. We're inviting all the candidates to take part in a 30-minute interview to find out who they are and why they think they're the right person for the job. Up next is Laurence Vaughan-Williams, who's standing in Rushen. He's been speaking to Lewis Foster.
Today we are talking to Laurence Vaughan-Williams. Laurence is an independent candidate standing in the constituency of Rushen. An advocate, he's also currently a Port St Mary Commissioner, having served on the local authority since 2017. In a statement, he says his decision to stand is driven by a belief that many people across the island feel their voices are no longer being heard. Well, we'll go into some of your priorities and a bit into your manifesto shortly, Mr. Vaughan-Williams. But first of all, just tell us, why do you want to be an MHK?
Well, wherever I go, I hear people moaning. There appears to be a general feeling that things are not going quite as well in the island as people would like. Now, I think that there are some very good candidates this year, and I think that those of us who've got some experience, and I have experience of business, I've got experience as an advocate. Subject which is very dear to my heart is reform, judicial reform, especially in relation to drugs. I'm a prison adjudicator. I've seen at first hand the problems which quite a lot of prisoners face, and I've seen the problems which those that are looking after the prisoners face. And I feel there's a disconnect. Years ago, the Isle of Man was very unified. You would go to, for example, a garden party or to a church, and you would see a judge, you'd see the dustman, you'd see the commissioner, you'd see the local policeman. All of that seems to have decompartmentalised into a disconnect from the average man in the street who looks at the things which are going on in Tynwald and says, what has that got to do with the price of bread? What have these debating topics got to do with the fact that I'm struggling to earn a living?
What debating topics are we talking about there?
Well, there you are. But I mean, I'm sure if I'd been in charge of the economy, I wouldn't have had time to concentrate on assisted dying, for a starter, whatever the merits of that. Whatever the merits.
You don't agree with assisted dying?
No, I haven't reached a decision on that. My father died when I was 14. He died of cancer. I saw the suffering up close. What you're asking for is state-sponsored suicide. You're asking for judges to make a decision as to life and death. Now, we have some fine judges, but they don't always get it right. And I want to look at the safeguards in great detail. And I do think it's a matter for people's conscience. There are still a great number of people in the Isle of Man who actually believe in God and have strong moral reasons for not being in favour of this. There's also the counter-argument that, of course, if the hospice is there, that can alleviate the suffering that my father had in any event. So I've said, let's have a referendum on it. Let's see what the people want.
Even at the stage we're at, where we're waiting for royal assent, we've been through the whole process up to now, you still think we should go back and ask the public again? If
it's not too late, yes, I do. I really feel that this is a moral question, and it does concern me greatly, giving the state these powers, however well-intentioned.
Are you a religious man, Mr. Vaughan-Williams?
I wouldn't describe myself as that. I do believe in God. I try and lead a reasonable life, but I wouldn't say that I attended church every week or did any more than just try and lead a reasonably decent life.
Now, you have been a commissioner, as we heard, for a number of years now. Can you take us back? When did you start there?
Well, 2017, but I actually started many years before that. When I was the youngest councillor in the country, in England, way back, and I was elected on my 21st birthday. So I served in Southport County Borough Council and then at Sefton Borough Council. But politics went from being a part-time job to a full-time job. And at that time, I had a wife and 2 young children to support, and I also had my way to make professionally. So I had a decision to make, and it was that I couldn't continue in politics at that stage. I became involved in Port St Mary at a very difficult time when they had a rather unfortunate habit of losing their clerk, something which appears to be happening again, but for different reasons.
You took over as chairman in 2018,
That's right. That's right. And we restored order and got the thing on a level footing again. And of course, it was during the time of the debate about Manxonia House. And if you go to Port St Mary today, you'll see Kellers are running it, and it's an absolutely superb venue.
What is your relationship with the Isle of Man? You've mentioned being across in England for a big portion of your life. When did you move here?
I first came here when I was 4.5, and my mother put me on the boat in a gabardine raincoat and a school cap, and we sat on the top deck right the way here to Douglas, and I knew this was the place that I wanted to live. Later, I came here when I wasn't an advocate or even a lawyer. I received great encouragement from William Kane, the then Attorney General. Decided to begin studying from home. Thought if I could just get a law degree. Well, I managed to get a law degree. And then I thought, well, maybe I could qualify at the English bar. I managed to do that. Then if I could just become an advocate, and I managed to do that. So I also worked in England. I think I came back to the island full-time around about 1998, 1999, but I had lived here before then.
And so moving to then this last decade and the time you've spent as a commissioner, what was the trigger point? Let's say over the last 5 years, what was the trigger point that made you think, I want to stand to be an MHK in the 2026 election?
Well, I think being chair of the Southern Swimming Pool Board, there were a group of us who felt that the Southern Swimming Pool Board should be, or the Southern Swimming Pool should be saved. And there had been decades when wrong decisions had been made. We were faced with a situation that the pool was going to be closed. It was going to go bust, effectively. But a group of us got together, and I'm going to use a hackneyed phrase now. There's no I in teams. I believe very much in teamwork. And a group of us on the board got together, and we managed to save the pool. And to that extent, whilst I know one of the questions that you've asked other candidates is which politician do you inspires you or do you admire, I can say I've got great thanks to Alf Cannon, because a little girl wrote to him and said, please don't close my pool. And Joan Watson, various others, Lawrence Skelly, all said the same thing. And I was very proud when he came down and said, well, unless you need absolute major refurbishment and something goes terribly, terribly wrong, you can keep it open. And to me, that was absolutely great. But I have looked at the history of the school, the pool, and plans are made. I think throughout my life there have been plans for a new school, or the latter part of my life, in Castle Rushen. This has been kicked down the road again now. There were plans last year for a new school and a sports hub. Then I thought the argument was going to be who runs it? Do local commissioners run it, or does the Department of Education and Science run it? It turned out that the thing appears to have been just kicked down the road. Why they can't just go to England, look at a school and say, that'll do the job, bring the plan back and build it, I do not know.
Now, one of your priorities, you said, making sure the development of a new school, swimming pool and sports hub at the Castle Rushen site actually happens this time. If you're elected, how are you going to do that? How soon would you do that?
Well, what power does an ordinary MHK have? I look at some of the election leaflets which go out, and they remind me very much of when I was a little boy and it was Christmas and I used to do a wish list of things that I wanted, a toy gun or a toy ship or whatever, and then you would put them over the flame in the fire, they'd go up the chimney and that would be it. What power does an ordinary MHK have? But a group of us working together in the South who all have the same view, then we can do something together. Again, no I in team. And there are some excellent candidates in the South generally, and I think we can work together and we can put pressure on and we can get it.
You have credited the outgoing Chief Minister. You referenced Mr. Watterson there, who today has been elevated to the position of President of Tynwald. But where do you think the Cannon administration has gone wrong over the past 5 years? Why do you think we don't have a new Castle Rushen High School? What would you have prioritised that the Cannon administration didn't?
Well, I think we're running at a £100 million deficit, and I think everybody has to get real about that for a start off. I have been looking at a number of things. For example, the size of the state. Now, there are those who believe in a large state. I believe in a small state. Why is it important? Well, if you look at our nearest neighbour, which is Sefton, they have 288,000 people in that catchment area. We've got 85,000. Our number of employees is double that of Sefton. Now, granted, they will have privatised certain things, such as buses, etc., but 288,000 against 80, and we've got double the ratio in percentage terms, and these are just back of an envelope figures. And you get people who stand for office, terribly well intentioned, but they've never run anything. They haven't got any business experience, and they're put in charge of a multi-million-pound department, and they're told what to do by the civil servants. And if they don't do what the civil servants tell them, very often they're accused of bullying. There's got to be a better way. The ministerial system, of course, is partly responsible for that. But we need, again, candidates who are going to get something done rather than just have a wish list.
You say you'll squeeze government until the pips squeak.
Absolutely.
That sounds quite threatening. Are you going to rule with an iron fist?
I don't think I've ever threatened. I don't think I've ever threatened anyone in my life. No, what I'm saying is that if you believe in something, and if you want to get something done, you keep the pressure on. And, one of the reasons there is a disconnect is that often people change when they become MHKs, and they become rather self-satisfied and rather smug, and their whole world revolves around the bubble, which is Tynwald. And no, I say that I'm for the people who feel that there is a disconnect. I'm for all the people who feel their views are not being heard. I will listen and I will be there for those people, if elected.
Let's go into how you pay for this, because you've had to put this explainer on your website. We'll dig back into your priorities as well. But you say you want to stimulate the economy and have the courage to cut waste. When you say cut waste, what would be your first target? Government. The size of the civil service.
The size of the civil service. And I think someone needs... Now, don't get me wrong, my interaction with members of the civil service has always been good. I'm not criticising individuals. What I'm criticising is the amount of people it needs to run the island. And I think we should have a proper audit of what people are doing, how many people are just not there. how many people are not at the desks.
So any specific offices, any particular departments where you think that's bloated, that's oversized, anything like that?
Give me a chance, I haven't been elected yet.
You don't know yet?
No, not yet, no. But I do get the feeling that we're over-regulated and we have a somewhat unimaginative treasury.
But if you don't know yet, why say it's in your manifesto that you'll squeeze government? If you think it's oversized but you don't know which...
I will squeeze in the sense that I want the new school at Castle Rushen. I want the new swimming pool. I will put the pressure on there. I will look at legislation. We pass legislation that has unintended consequences, often not good ones. Look at the Land Registration Act, brought about very largely by political pressure, which can lead to unjust anomalies in relation to whether a person gives their house to a child who has no property, in which case they pay one figure. If that child owns more than one property, they pay several times as much. This is the law of unintended consequences, and it comes because people do not think through the effect of the legislation.
Stop strangling small businesses and farmers with tax regulations and employment laws. Which regulations, which employment laws are you talking about there?
Well, I was the deputy employment chairperson for, I think I still have one case, which I'm doing, and I see it from both sides. And I see the Equality Act and the Employment Act. Once unfair dismissal is established, then the consequences for a small business can be tremendous. We have, or had, a paper store in Port St Mary, the Torden stores. That has now closed. They just can't make it pay. Combination of rents, national insurance, where we import the rates from the UK, and the general expenses of doing business mean that the shutters are going up. And I think that's something we need to look at. We need to see whether we can raise the VAT threshold for a start off. We need to look at our national insurance. And I mean, the government isn't going to do anything about it as long as the money's coming in. But I think these are the areas. Regulation. In the newspaper yesterday, it said that the average small business spends more time dealing with regulation and administration than it does with sales. This is absolutely...
Is that a Manx newspaper?
No, in the Daily Mail. I found it, but it wasn't the Daily Mail that did the survey. But it did show that small businesses are spending more time on regulation. And of course, if you look at the regulators, the Financial Services Authority has draconian powers which it can administer and can close you down in 24 hours or even less than that. What is the accountability to Tynwald? I'm against, not against regulation, but I do think that we've reached a stage where we're being legislated, and to the extent that it's strangling small business.
The issues you've mentioned so far, Mr. Vaughan-Williams, assisted dying, the size of government, regulation, employment rights, have you drawn on that from feedback from constituents? Have you spoken to constituents about what their priorities are? I
have been canvassing, and the support I've been getting has been very supportive. The most controversial aspect you haven't as yet dealt with, which is my view that many young people are getting a criminal record for possession of cannabis. Mm-hmm. Now, I have a vested interest here, not because I smoke cannabis, I don't, but I lost a daughter to drugs. I also, as a prison adjudicator, which I've been for nearly a decade now, I've seen the amount of people that are in prison for drugs. I've also seen the effects which long-term cannabis use can have on clients of mine. But for all of that, I say that 20 years ago, an appeal judge said the war on drugs had been lost. For many young people, or many people, smoking cannabis is just as common as smoking cigarettes was when I was younger. And so the time has come to legalise it, regulate it, drive these scallies with their cannabis bush and a grinder in the back pocket out of business, concentrate on the hard drugs. You can only police or enforce any law if you have the public support. Many years ago, I argued against the liberalisation of the laws in relation to homosexuality. Why? Because it was an unenforceable law, and it was branding people as criminals who weren't. The laws moved on. Now, if you could enforce the law against drugs, if it was enforceable, we would have done it. We haven't been able to do it. Now, if we regulate it, we can tax it, and that tax can go to ensuring, for a start off, that people don't have to sell their homes when they go into care. It can also have the fact that if we have proper facilities for those who have addiction problems, whether it be drugs or whether it be alcohol, then we'd find the Derby prison would empty out and we wouldn't need more prison places. There would be not as many prison people with prison records, and you would have a regulated system that could then be policed.
What do you make of the charity Motivate, then, and the work that they do? Do you think more resources should be pushed towards the third sector like that?
Let me give you two examples, if I may. One young man I know who has never worked, except for very briefly, said to me in my office, "Your generation had something to strive for. You had something to strive for. You wanted a house, you wanted a car or whatever." He said, "I don't need that. I get X amount of pounds from the government by way of benefit. I spend half of it on cannabis and I'm quite happy. I don't need anything more." Another fellow who would have known them, dealing in drugs, who, again, I've represented from childhood, from his childhood, not mine, has got off it very largely. He found what he wanted. He got a job on a fishing boat. And that job on that fishing boat has saved his life. And he hasn't been happier. Motivate do a tremendous job. And I salute them. When I do work up at the prison as an adjudicator, I think there's something sadly lacking in our education system generally, because a lot of people have just not had the degree of kindness in their lives which might have had a different outcome. Not just kindness, but also discipline. You don't make things better for people by not having any discipline whatsoever. But certainly I see people who are in prison who are basically decent people who have got caught up in addiction, family problems, social problems. They're not criminals to the extent that they have a criminal mindset. Yes, they've offended against the law. They've been adjudged as criminals, but they shouldn't be in prison. There should be a better way.
Okay, so let's say you propose we legalise cannabis.
Yes.
We've seen over the last 5 years attempts to bring in assisted dying laws, and we've seen where it's hit a bit of a snag with the UK. Say the UK turns around after we develop this bill to legalise cannabis on the Isle of Man and says we're not granting that royal assent. How do you avoid that situation? How do you get the UK to back such a bill?
one of the things that does bother me is that we are a nation. We are an independent nation. We are a self-governing crown dependency. If you want us to succeed, let us govern ourselves and stop interfering. Or don't start to interfere with what we intend to do.
It's all very well saying that, though, isn't it? How do you actually get them on board?
Well, I think that many years ago, the then Queen said that they would never resist any nation that wanted to become independent. Now, I'm not suggesting that this is something we should do, but I think we've got far more clout than we exert. And I do think there's a general respect for the Isle of Man, in particular the way that our image has changed and is much better now than it ever was.
Mr. Vaughan-Williams, I'm conscious of the time. We've only got a few minutes left, so I think we should get back into one of your priorities. In fact, the one that you've listed first, which is support green energy policies while opposing onshore and offshore wind farm. Do they not go hand in hand? So what green energy policies would you propose?
Well, I think that for a start off, I love the Isle of the Manx countryside. It's one of the reasons I live here. I don't want it despoiled with windmills. I'm not convinced that offshore windmills are the way forward. And I'm not convinced that they're going to offer the average person the benefit. What are we going to get out of it? 15% off a electricity bill is not going to be that great. If they turn around to us and say you can have an offshore wind farm and we will make it, as they used to say about nuclear power, too cheap to meter, then of course one might be interested. But there are various developments, dare I say nuclear, down the line. We can tap into...
Some would argue that's not green.
We can... Well, I think the traditional form of nuclear energy is not, but I think that the modern small nuclear reactors, we could tap into either Ireland or the UK. And of course we have the great benefit in the island of tidal. Tidal hasn't been fully explored. Hydro. There are lots of ways. Yes, let's go for green energy, but let's make sure we do it in the right way.
Solar panels, things like that?
Absolutely.
Yeah. What are your constituents saying about this, about the net zero question?
Well, I don't. I've only had one person who's raised net zero, but I have had quite a lot of opposition to wind farms, both onshore and offshore. And the one question people have said, what would it do for us? What would it do for us? How much would we save? Well, not very much on the present plans, as I see it.
Mr. Vaughan-Williams, we've just got around a minute left, so I just want to ask you one final question. Why should someone in the constituency of Rushen vote for you?
They should vote for me because I am not doing this for me. It's not for my personal ego. I don't have any desire to be an MHK other than to serve and to do the best that I can to make things better and make people have a degree of hope in the future.
That was Laurence Vaughan-Williams, who's standing for election in Rushen. Also standing in the constituency are Gary Chambers, Michael Crowe, Michelle Haywood, Mark Kemp, Helen Sheppard and Simon Williams. You can listen back to this interview, along with all the others recorded as part of this series, shortly after broadcast from your usual podcast provider. And as always, we have everything you need to know about the general election on our dedicated website, which you can find at manxradio.com.